We do have a ton to get through in this episode.
Common sense is finally prevailing.
There was controversy this month, Dave.
I'm not particularly excited by that.
Secrets and things on set.
I haven't told them anything.
I think this is just good times all round.
Every Doctor Who is liked by somebody, and that's a really good thing.
Davo, my doctor.
I know we disagree on this one.
First world problems, Dave.
I get why fans are asking those questions.
Oh gosh, that's actually quite a lot to talk about.
It doesn't compute.
It's the elephant in the room.
That's okay.
Fandom versus the BBC.
The cardinal sin.
Moving along.
Lunch.
G'day, I'm Rob.
And I'm Dave.
And this is the Doctor Who show for the month of May 2026. Dave, hello.
Hello, Rob. Happy birthday for a few days coming as we record and a couple of days past as we release this episode.
Yes, I was going to cheat a bit and say it was my birthday a couple of days ago on the 29th, but of course we're recording before that, so thank you in advance to everyone in my immediate circle who knows that and has wished me well. And Dave, your birthday's in the not-too-distant future itself.
Yeah, I suppose it must be.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, there you go.
Folks, tonight's topic, just like it says on the tin, is the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky as voted for by you. And when we get to that segment, we'll discuss how we're going to be changing our voting process in the future, because this time around, well, it crashed and burned, didn't it, Dave? So stay tuned for a bit more on that later.
Yes, but we are talking Sontarans, we are talking New Who, we are talking Imperial Phase Tenant. I'm interested to see how this goes.
Me too. But should we get into some news first?
We should.
Alrighty. The Doctor Who Christmas Special 2026. It's been a topic of debate since Ncuti's finale, where he regenerated, or at least partially regenerated, into Billie Piper. It was her head on his body. It was a bit weird. And everyone's been saying, how's this going to work? Is she the new Doctor? Does she helm the Christmas episode, then turn into another Doctor? Or does she continue to morph into someone else and they take the lead in the Christmas special? Or is the person in the Christmas special the new Doctor? Or are they going to continue regenerating at the end of that? Is this a chance to bring old Doctors into it? That's an idea I've been kicking around since last year. Is it even right for RTD to be prescribing a new Doctor when he and Bad Wolf perhaps might not be involved with the show after Christmas? And on it goes.
Rob, is there going to be a Christmas special?
Well, I'm getting to that, Dave, because there's been grumblings about the way no cameras seem to be rolling yet to make a show that's less than 7 months away from where we sit here. So RTD has actually got out there to explain that it's all part of a cunning plan to keep things secret. And I quote, "Wouldn't it be great if we just got to this year's Doctor Who Christmas special and nothing had been spoiled and everything was new? Why do we do it any other way? We only ever read the clippings. We thrive on the clippings. If you're a child, you don't read the Daily Mirror. There's not one child who stands in the playground saying, oh, guess what it said in the newspaper? The real drama of Katarina's arrival and her shocking death played out on screen in the moment. It's not that you read about this stuff, you saw it and experienced it." Now, before we get to the rumour mill, Dave, I'll take a breath. What are your thoughts on what we know to have happened, or not happened as it were, and these comments from RTD that it's all just some cunning plan and everything's still happening?
It does really feel like a huge amount of spin, and it does feel like spin to cover things that aren't happening, because if you go all the way back to last year when I did my interview with Dylan Rees about producing television, and he did make the point that before you actually turn on a camera, there's a lot of things that have to be done, and we're not sure if they're being done. Is there a Doctor Who production office? Is somebody doing the budget and working out what they need to do? Has somebody booked the camera equipment? Is somebody scouting locations? Has somebody booked all of the hundreds of people that go into a production that you see on a list of modern television credits? Has somebody started designing sets? Has somebody started building sets? We don't know. It feels like it's not happening. And look, I understand that you can turn the camera on probably later than we realise and still deliver something for Christmas, provided it's not too SFX heavy. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you need to do a lot of work to actually hire people and hire equipment and do that work. And is that happening? I don't know.
And there would be advertisements for that. Because Doctor Who fans are getting pretty dab hands at spotting these advertisements, calls for extras, calls for production staff, and saying, that looks like it's the Doctor Who production because it's Bad Wolf and it's this time of year, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, they are. So I suspect we would have seen that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Now for the rumour mill. There are plenty of rumours going around that say it feels like nothing much has happened because, dun dun dun, nothing much has happened. Billy's not available until much later in the year, some people say. So RTD's been madly writing and rewriting, trying to come up with something they can film in this increasingly short period of time, given how tight her schedule seems to be. The more time that goes on, the more fraught things are getting, to the degree that some reckon it's not happening at all. Now, do I believe that? I think that would be a massive egg on the face moment for the BBC and for RTD professionally if nothing happened. I think if you're RTD and right here, right now, Billy's saying, you can have me for 3 months out from Christmas, and the BBC saying, no, that's not enough time. Make the damn thing now, Rusty. I think he would have to write a script where Billy morphs into McGann straight away and McGann has a fun adventure, and you film it in the next month in a bunch of existing locations, so you're not building sets and things like that. You do the haunted house story, something simple like that. I can't see RTD just letting this all turn to shit. It's likely his Doctor Who swan song. I'd be gobsmacked if he lets this all collapse in on itself.
I think the only way it does collapse in on itself without egg on the BBC's face is if it falls by the wayside because there is an announcement about another production company, another production house, another streaming partner, whatever the combination might be, coming in and saying, we have signed on the dotted line, we are making the next series of Doctor Who, and we are starting from point zero, and we don't want you to do a Christmas special. We want the next thing you see to be us. And the BBC would say that's not unreasonable. Therefore, the Christmas special, which, they haven't spent any money on anyway, goes fall by the wayside. Does RTD have egg on his face? Yes. But look, the man's had a fairly stellar television career. I think he'll cope.
Oh, yeah, I think he will. But that's an interesting point that you raised. I had not considered that at all, that it could get blamed, in quotation marks, on just the new production that's coming down the track for 2028 or whatever it is.
Yeah, imagine you're a big production company, streaming service, whatever, and you say, do you want the next thing people to see to be the fag end of RTD's era of the show, or do you want the first thing people see after the announcement to be your big blockbuster opening? Of course you want it to be that, because a lot of people don't follow this thing. They're going to say, oh, I've heard that these guys are making Doctor Who now. I've heard that Irwin Kitchen Productions have picked up Doctor Who and they're making it. And then they see this Christmas special go out and they go, I don't like that. That's not new and innovative. That's not what I expected. I'm not tuning in. But it wasn't us, it was them. You know what I'm saying?
As long as we can hire Dylan Rees as our top man in the field, I'm happy.
Sure. I'll invest all my savings in our production company and buy Doctor Who.
Fantastic.
We should be able to screen at least 4 seconds.
Fantastic. Shall we move on?
We should. An interesting piece of news, Rob. We have got another multi-platform Doctor Who adventure. It's another one of these things that now seem to pop up every couple of years where you do a story on multiple platforms. I'll read a couple of sentences from the announcement. The global multi-platform story begins 25 June, and The Fugitive Doctor is at the centre of it all. Circuit Breaker brings together a range of long-standing Doctor Who partners, including Titan Comets, Doctor Who Magazine, BBC Audiobooks, Eastside Games, Puff and BBC Books, and Big Finish, each delivering a unique chapter of the story across the summer. Rob, how excited are you to go and buy a comic, a magazine, an audiobook, a game, I don't know what the hell Puffin makes, a book and a Big Finish audio, so you can get a full story?
Oh, Dave, I just shook my head when I saw this. But before I go on, let me say, if you like the Jo Martin Doctor, great. If you like books with her, great. If you like audios with her, great. If there's a Doctor you like, it's great to have merchandise for them. That's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I was going to say the same thing myself. I know The Fugitive Doctor has dedicated fans out there. I don't know how many there are, whether there's a passionate 2,000 or a passionate 50,000. I don't know, but they exist. Absolutely.
Yeah. But what had me shaking my head was I thought, Christ, they're doing this multi-format thing again. Like Time Lord Victorious, a flop. Doomsday, a flop. And now this, asking people to not just buy a few books to tell a story, but buy some books, buy some audio, buy Doctor Who magazine, buy comics. It's this cynical manipulation of Doctor Who fans. Like, oh, you know those fans, they're fanatical. They need to collect everything. So let's manipulate that impulse that's already inside them to sell lots of books and audios and magazines and comics. It's all based on manipulation. It's such a cynical marketing exercise, Dave. I hate it. And in a cost of living crisis too, we're really doing this? I think it's total frog shit. Total and utter frog shit, and I don't care who knows.
Yeah, I was a little bit cynical about it as well. I hope that there is some level of standaloneness in each one, because I know last time there would be some people go, you know what, I buy Big Finish, I'll go and check out the Big Finish thing, and it wasn't terrible, it wasn't too bad, I buy Doctor Who magazine, I'll get that one, and, you know, I might get a comic, or I might get a book, but, I mean, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 different platforms.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how cheap the game is going to be, for example. I don't know how cheap buying a puffin is going to be. I don't know if you can even legally own puffins. Surely they're endangered or something. So...
What do they eat?
Yeah, I what do you feed a puffin? I don't know.
Yeah,
how do you have?
I don't know.
I don't know. This is very, very strange, Rob. Look, again, for fans of the Fugitive Doctor who are there and they're passionate, and look, I like a Doctor. I've said that the Fugitive was one of my favourite episodes of Jodie's era. I wasn't that excited by her other appearances, but yeah, like someone will buy this and someone will be happy, but it just seems odd to me that at a time when the show is really in hibernation, deeper hibernation than it's been since 2004, really, it seems an odd choice.
Yeah, look, that's why I prefaced my comments by saying, if you like the Joe Martin Doctor and just say this was a trilogy of novels, I'd be sitting here saying, happy days for you guys. Look, a trilogy of novels for your favourite Doctor. Isn't that marvellous? But when it becomes this multi-platform thing, oh no, it loses me. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Moving on, something I talked about on the socials recently, Dave. Ncuti Gatwa was on the UK version of SNL, and part of his monologue ran, and I quote, "I've had so many fantastic roles in my career. Millions of you watched me as Eric in Sex Education, and then about 12 of you watched me in Doctor Who. Maybe that's why I kept crying." And you know what? I think this was one of the best things he could ever say about his time on the show. I don't know whether it's a cultural, particularly Aussie thing, but down here we love people who can take a joke, people who can laugh at themselves. We like people who keep it real. We like skewering bullshit. So when Ncuti's had an era that didn't land, and everyone can see it didn't land, Ncuti could come out and pretend it was the best thing ever and hugely successful and the best time of his working career, and we'd skewer that. Or he can make a joke like this that while he's been super successful in some things, absolutely no debate about that, he has. His time in Doctor Who, though, really did crash and burn. And suggesting that's the reason he was always crying on the show, that's the cherry on top. Chef's kiss, well played to Ncuti, and I guess the SNL writers, absolutely the best way to handle it. What else can you say, Dave, except, well played?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say I'm really delighted to have seen that the first season of UK SNL seems to have gone down fairly well. I've had a number of friends in the UK who've tweeted about it and mentioned they've enjoyed it. I've seen a few of the sketches. I've enjoyed the Keir Starmer impressions. It's kind of been a fun thing from what I've seen. So like I'm glad that's happening. I sort of woke up whatever morning this happened, and I saw a few people quote in sort of text what Ncuti had said. And when I read it as a quote, I did sort of think, ooh, that's a bit pointed. Ooh, I wonder if he's having a jab there. Ooh. And then a little bit later, when people have been able to, download the video and tweet it, I actually watched his monologue. And as I watched it, I've gone, this wasn't pointed. This was a guy having a laugh at himself. This was done with a smile. It was done as part of a bit of banter. That was a funny joke. And it was good fun.
Yeah, it just diffuses the whole issue, and that's what humour is great at doing. I think it was a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah, it was a joke.
Yeah. Shall we move on to our fourth and final piece?
Well, our fourth news item is a recurring non-news item. Now, Rob, you have been saying very knowingly, Rob, you very knowingly and very assuredly, you've been telling us They said that the War Between the Land and the Sea would be out on Disney Plus in the middle of the year. Well, Rob, it's June, in a few days' time, and there's no sign of it still.
Yeah, this is quite extraordinary, Dave. The thing is free to show. I mean, they've paid for it, yet here we are, 1 month off the middle of the year. If we take it to the end of June, let's take it to the end of June, which has been my suggested air date on more podcasts of ours than I can count. Yet we look ready to blaze past even that. Are we really approaching a point where Disney doesn't bother showing this at all? Is there some sort of tax break for that? Is that what they're angling for? Have they already done that? I think this is quite extraordinary. But I guess anyone down here who really wanted to see it, I'm not one of them, has either taken to the high seas or bought the Blu-ray from the UK. So does it even matter if Disney shows it?
It's interesting you make that point, Robert. My understanding of US tax law, and this is only from what I've read, I'm not a US tax lawyer in any way, shape or form, but my understanding is that for you to get the tax benefits of a write-off, you have to make no money out of it. So that's why when you occasionally hear about film studios putting a movie in the vault because they just go, we would rather just write this off as a tax loss than release it and not make much money. And people say, oh, maybe one day, it'll come off as a bit of a fan screening or a one-off something. And they go, no. We have to make $0 from this, or it isn't considered a tax write-off. So it is going in the vault. Given the co-partnership, I don't know whether this would qualify. They could do that. I think it would be extraordinary if they did do that. But yeah, like as every month goes on after the BBC showed it, it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And I don't know what they're waiting for.
Well, see, I'd raise something like the Willow TV series, also on Disney Plus, that did go out. It did air. It was on Disney Plus. Everyone said it was bloody awful. I never watched it. I mean, I love the original Willow film, but I never watched the series. They have taken it away and it will never be shown again. And they got some sort of tax write-off on that. And that's something that was actually on the platform for a period of time. So there must be some loopholes with this.
As I say, I'm not an expert. I've never seen Willows. I've seen Wind in the Willows, but I've never seen Willows.
Willow is a fantastic film. You should watch Willow. We could watch Willow for an alternate galaxies. It's fantasy.
Okay, put it on the list.
Should we move on to short topics?
Yes, Rob, you've got 2 one-word short topics this time. I have no idea what they mean, so tell us your first.
Don't worry, Dave. I will bring them home to Doctor Who, and there are questions for you, but you'll just have to bear with me initially. The first one is, over the past month, I've been in the trenches talking Star Wars canon with a lot of people on the socials. Specifically this idea that when Disney came in and said, we're decanonizing everything, aside from the movies and some of the TV shows. So, whatever you read in a novel or comic from now on in the Disney era is absolutely canon, but anything before that wasn't. This all happened over a decade ago now, Dave, and it seems to have created younger fans in particular who misread that as, because Disney decanonized the Star Wars extended universe, it must mean it was canon beforehand. You can understand the mistake. To be decanonized, I should say, surely it had to be canon. But no, the Star Wars EU was never the same canonicity as the films. As much as someone might read Heir to the Empire and the dozens and dozens of novels that came after it, and I have read them, dear listener, and think they were really great, they were never movie canon, or what you might call George Lucas canon, or G canon. And, when I say G canon, I'm not lying. Lucasfilm used to have G, T, C, S, and N canon. Back in the day. This is the complexity that Disney was seeking to blow away when it came in. So anyway, you can see why this has been an incredible debating topic, or something to just argue about with Star Wars fans online. And I put the question to you, Dave, is Doctor Who better off with this, what we do, not we personally, but we as fans, this hand wave and this simple, oh, look, everything you see or read or hear, it might have happened, or it did happen, and look, if it contradicts anything else, it's just in the retelling, like it's a myth or a story lost in time. So have fun, kids. Believe in everything. The end. Do you like that sort of thing in Doctor Who's approach to canon, or would you rather it be a bit more regimented?
That's a tough question for me, Rob, because my inclination and my personality is that I do like things written out very clearly. I love something like the History of the Universe book, which puts everything into a nice continuity that you can all shape things around and everything. I do like that, but as a practical person, it's just impossible to do. It's absolutely nonsense. And I think the Doctor Who has benefited from the fact that it has never been, one clear vision from a particular individual or studio. It's been, this is what Verity Lambert and David Whittaker did, and then Terry Nation threw in some stuff, and then John Wiles threw in some stuff, and then Barry Letts and Terence Dix just threw it out the window, and then Robert Holmes just stepped on it and did it all, and then, you go on and on and on, and then you start writing Target books and just doing a bit of a tweak to the story there, and then you have spin-offs, and then you have Slipback, and, is the Pescatons canon? Are the New Adventures, and who cares? Because it just becomes a nonsense, and you realise how much of a nonsense and a pain it is when I go to something like TARDIS Wikipedia wanting a simple answer to something. Did the Doctor encounter this before or whatever? And you get this list of, in this story brackets audio, and in this story bracket book, and in this story bracket comic, and you're like, this is too much. I just want to double check which stories this villain appeared in on TV. Yes, it is absolutely appropriate. And I think that the reason is the same as the reason why Disney did, in inverted commas, decanon all the extended universe. As much as, look, I like you, I love the extended universe in Star Wars. I think my favourite Star Wars is from the extended universe, but you can't be beholden to it if you're trying to make new content. And it's the same for Doctor Who. If you're making a Doctor Who TV series, the less you are beholden to just indecipherable, unconsumable amounts of material. If you have to be able to consume every original Doctor Who, NA, EDA, PDA, MA, every Big Finish production ever made, you could spend the rest of your life trying to listen to all of Big Finish's stories and still not get there. How do you factor that all into a new series of Doctor Who? You can't, so don't.
Yeah, and that was Disney's issue. They were making a new set of films in which Han and Leia didn't have 3 children called Jason, Jaina, and Anakin. So all those books from the extended universe where Jason, Jaina, and Anakin existed, how can they exist? Then that was one of the issues. Anyway, we won't stay on Star Wars. Let's move on to our next short topic.
Look, I just want to say, Rob, in the last month, since Dalek's master plan was found, I've had a Hartnell itch and I've been scratching it with delight. As I said to you on the last episode, Rob, I did get the audio out and listened to all of Dalek's master plan on a long road trip. I had another decent road trip not too long after that, so I got the Massacre out, one of your favourites.
Yeah.
And I listened to that, and that was really enjoyable. And I said, I want to watch more Hartnell. So I watched The Reign of Terror, I watched The Censorites, I watched The Ark, and I watched The Romans. A couple there are absolute favourites of mine and still are. A couple of them are ones that I don't pull out all that often. I think The Reign of Terror is probably the weakest of the Hartnell historicals, but that's up against some pretty spectacular competition. I've long been a bit of a defender of The Censorites. When I watched it again, I was reminded that yes, it's got a very weak sort of part 2, 3, but once it gets going, it really kicks off and it's pretty cool. Yeah. I just had fun watching Hartnell. It just sort of became my default watch for a few weeks there.
Yeah, no, it's really nice to hear. My next single topic, Dave, Buffy, ! After the disappointment of that new Buffy series, tanking at the pilot stage a couple of months back, despite the whole fandom mad keen to support it and even having Sarah Michelle Gellar back on board, something that no one ever thought would happen. I've been reading a lot of Buffy novels, Dave. Some of these are very simple, almost like Target novels, a bit more advanced than Target novels, but not much. And some are more full-blown novels, which are very long and take themselves very seriously. More like the Star Wars Extended Universe novels, that we were just talking about. And I've been really enjoying myself with these. These are books I probably should have read at the time, much the same as I should have read the Doctor Who New Adventures as they were coming out. Otherwise, you have this massive backlog of dozens and dozens of books in front of you. But it's been reasonably cheap to pick them up in job lots, and it's quite fun to do this because Buffy fiction is reasonably rare these days. It's still made, but it's quite rare. So to have this pile of it to dip into from a quarter of a century ago, or longer in some cases, is just really nice and comforting. And I just love dipping back into these TV tie-in type books, no matter what the series is. In this case, it's Buffy.
I didn't know that there were Buffy tie-in novels. I obviously know about Doctor Who tie-in, I know about Red Dwarf tie-in, I know about Star Wars tie-in.
Star Trek,
yeah. So look, I didn't know that Buffy was a thing. Were they out in shops here, Rob?
They were. I do remember them. When I'd be in sci-fi bookstores and such, you would see the piles of Doctor Who, Star Trek, Buffy. Angel had its own novel, so a spin-off from the spin-off had a spin-off novel or novels. Amazing. Totally different to today.
Fair enough. I'm glad you're enjoying them.
Yeah, good fun. And finally, Dave, one from you.
Yes, I've been reading some Doctor Who as well. Ever since we did Father Time, Rob, a year ago nearly now, I've been saying I need to read a bit more of the Eighth Doctor, and I've been listening to a couple of podcasts lately that talked about more in that Doctor stuck on Earth cycle, and I thought it's time to actually get out there and read a couple of more of them. And I was really interested to read the Turing Test particularly, because you particularly highlighted that. You said, Dave, that's one you need to read. And others had said good things about it. So I did take away to Thailand the Turing Test, and I did really, really enjoy it. I was a little surprised because it is by Paul Leonard, and I've liked a couple of his books in the past. I thought Venusian Lullaby was probably the best of his work. I didn't mind Dancing the Code, but a couple of his others are pretty tiresome. But this was a really exciting book. It didn't hurt that, of course, it is dealing with some subject matter that I'm very interested in, being Alan Turing and his work at Bletchley Park and World War II and all the rest of them. It was an exciting novel. And so that was pretty cool. And then I enjoyed it so much, I went straight on to Endgame by Terrance Dicks. And that was a really fun novel. Again, deals with some aspects of history that I'm really interested in. I've got biographies of people like Guy Burgess and Kim Philby and the like, and I've read about the Cambridge spies many times, and that's and Harry Truman and all the rest of it. So again, dealing with material that I was just naturally going to be involved with. And look, is Endgame a particularly deep or meritorious piece of literature? No, I'll say no. But it was just an absolute barn buster of a page turner by Terrance, and I really enjoyed those two books, and so I have kept going. I've started Escape Velocity, so I can find out how this whole Doctor Stuck on Earth saga ends.
I'm very happy to see this, and I commented on social the other day, a lot of people listening wouldn't have seen it. Look at you, Dave. You're reading Eighth Doctor novels. I find this quite exciting after 10 years of doing the podcast and me sort of waving the flag for the EDAs. You're reading them! And I'm like, yes, finally.
Which leads me to my question for you, Rob. What should my next EDA be? Now, the ones I own. I sent you a photo. But, eBay is out there.
Yes.
Where should I go next? Should I go back to something a bit early? Should I go to something a bit late? Is there a Dave, please, I need you to read this one for me? Where should I go?
Oh, look, it's so hard, particularly when you are reading them out of order. I don't want to sort of spring something on you where I say, oh, you can read this, but you should have read this one and this one and this one. You need to know who this character is, blah, 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 blah. So the one that came to mind is The Adventuress of Henrietta Street, which is a Mad Larry book. It's famously the one he said, I came back to Doctor Who. I said I'd never do Doctor Who again, but I came back because I wanted to buy some Lego. So I wrote a book to make some money to buy Lego. And it's written in a really interesting way. I won't go into too much detail. It's not your typical, you won't read this like a normal novel. It's written in an interesting way. It's got an interesting premise. It sets up a character who will be a bit of a thing going forward if you read novels with that character in them. I'd plump for that one. And because it's not one of the big Mad Larry books like Alien Bodies and such, I'm thinking you might be able to get it, might being the operative word, for a reasonable price.
Okay, I will keep an eye out for that one on eBay. It may not be the very next thing I read, because there are a couple of past Doctor Adventures I've picked up on eBay lately as well that I'm interested to get a take into. But no, I think that EDAs are going to be more regularly on my rotation now.
Oh, that's very good. And look, if worse comes to worse, I'll send you down a box of mine and you can borrow them for a year or something.
Very nice of you.
No worries. Oh, I should ask, how are you dealing with the small print? Because anytime I try to read them now, I think, my God, this print is tiny.
Yes, it is not quite at the point where I cannot read it without my glasses, but it is a little bit sort of like, wow, why do they make this choice?
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Anyway, let's move on to our main topic, Dave, the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. I'll start with the numbers for this poll, like we always do, and we'll talk about how broken the poll was and how we'll make sure that never happens again. But first, the numbers. In our first poll, which had 25 votes, the Sontaran Stratagem Poison Sky got 48% of the vote, or 12 of the votes. In our second poll, which got 7 votes, it got 57.1% of the votes, or 4 out of the 7 votes. And the combined totals, 32 votes overall. Sontaran Stratagem Poison Sky got 50% of the votes. This, of course, was against The End of the World, Planet of the Dead, and The Rings of Akaten. There you have it, from 32 votes. Not quite the kind of numbers we like to work with. We normally regularly pull in over 100 votes for these kind of polls.
Sometimes 200.
Yeah, but we found the polls on this occasion kept getting stuck, for want of a better word, and just not taking new votes. And we were road testing this with people we know, saying, can you put a vote on this? And they would, and it just wouldn't appear. This isn't a new thing. In the past, we'd had polls get stuck a few days in, but by that stage, we'd already had a ton of votes. We'd had 100 votes. We'd had 200 votes on some occasions. And we felt very confident about the winner. But these polls just took the biscuit because they seemed broken almost right away, which is why we even restarted one of them. It was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very frustrating because we really like this aspect of our show where we make some nominations and we let the listeners pick what it is that we're going to watch and talk about. I think it's a really little fun thing that we do, and to see it not really working was a bit disappointing.
Yeah. So look, in the future, we're going to use pollmaker.com or something like that. And the good news there is that anyone with a link to the poll will be able to vote. You know, it's platform agnostic. So not just people with an X account. And can I just say on that, the one reason we only ever stuck with X, and I know because some people have said, oh, why are you doing polls on X? You know, Elon is such a horrible man, is that we have by far our biggest social media following there. Our Facebook group would be second, and trailing way behind is Bluesky. So it was always just a numbers game to try and get the largest number of votes to make our winners definitive. That's why we used that. Anyway, enough housekeeping. Dave, why did you nominate this story or these 2 episodes?
So, Rob, I think one of the things we inadvertently both tried to do when we were picking stories to nominate for a new Who deep dive was stuff that is perhaps stories we haven't watched all that often or don't remember all that well. And let me say, you did that particularly well, and I'm actually quite keen. I think the next time we come round to a deep dive in a new Who story, maybe we should actively look for stories that neither of us have watched for a very long time, maybe even since first broadcast. And if that means we have to exchange, what we're each nominating just to make sure it's not something that we've seen, I think that could be a really fun idea.
Yeah.
But the Sontaran Stratagem wasn't quite that, but I did feel as though it is of that RTD era big relaunch of classic villain/monster, a bit of an also-ran there, a bit of a forgotten one there. It's not RTD brings back the Daleks or the Cybermen or the Master, etc., etc. It sort of gets a bit forgotten in season 4. It's also that last season of Tennant that I've wrestled with now for the better part of 2 decades. I have a love-hate relationship with it, and I keep wanting to go back and do a full rewatch of it, and I never quite can. I'm finding it easier to do it in bits. So I just thought, look, I haven't seen this, only on broadcast. I've watched it at least once since broadcast, but I think this might have only been the 3rd time. So I was curious to have another look at it.
Oh, very good. We typically do our memories and thoughts going in. I got 2 points here. I'll give you the first one. A big thought going into this, I'm going to say it up front, was disappointment that it won the poll. I'm not going to lie about that. And it's not because I dislike it. On the contrary, as I said in our last monthly, this is one of the stories I've seen the most out of the 4 stories that were on offer. And that's why I was disappointed. It was just a purely personal thing. I genuinely would have loved to have tackled Rings of Akaten. And thank you to those of you who voted for it. because that's a story I've not seen in a long, 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 long time. And it's a story that just gets smashed. I don't think I've really talked to anyone who actually likes it. So I would have found that quite fascinating to talk about. But here we are. We're going to talk about this story instead. That's fine. What about your memories and thoughts going in?
There's a lot there that I don't remember. And as I was watching it, there were definitely large subplots and scenes that I've gone, I'd completely forgotten about all of this. So that was interesting. I went in with a memory of very mixed views, but I was curious to see how much of that was because by that stage on first broadcast, I wasn't jiving with Donna at all. Mm-hmm. I wasn't diving with the Imperial 10th Doctor at all at this point, and whether that was contaminating the water a bit. So I had very mixed views going in, and look, I remembered it had the Sontarans, I remembered a couple of the key bits, but it was a bit of a blurry memory.
Okay. Historically, I remember seeing this at the time it came out. And since then, like I say, I've seen it a fair bit. So I went in with a pretty good understanding of the storyline, and I knew whether I liked it. Maybe a lot of the big and not so big beats in the piece I knew. But I also don't have a photographic memory, so I knew there would be stuff in here I've forgotten since the last time I saw it, which was easily a year or two back. And that's always kind of cool when we do this stuff. I was going to see new/old Doctor Who, at least in some of the scenes. And I was kind of anticipating that with a bit of expectation.
It was also very interesting at the time that there'd been a bit of a thing every year when New Who was coming out at that time about what the new big classic thing brought back would be. Series 1 was all about, are they bringing the Daleks back? And then you sort of find out, there's an episode called Dalek. Wow, they're bringing the Daleks back. Mm. Then there was this, almost kind of ridiculous attempt to pretend that the next thing they would bring back wouldn't necessarily be the Cybermen. And for years afterwards, my friend circle group used to refer to them as the spoiler men because you're not allowed to say the Cybermen are back, they're just spoiler men, guys. And then, the third season, there was that proper attempt at, no, we're not bringing the Master back at all. No, of course we're not. Of course we're not. No, they were never bringing the Master back. And then they did. But by this stage, everyone's like, we know how it works. You bring back a classic thing. Oh, you've called it the Sontaran Stratagem. Thank you for being upfront. We know they're coming back. We're not playing that bullshit game again.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Why don't you continue on with your initial reaction when you did start watching this, Dave?
I'll explain what my very initial reaction was to the cold open in a moment when we go into a bit more detail, Rob. But my general initial reaction is this is the most distilled piece of Russell T Davies' Doctor Who I could imagine existing. All of the strengths of Russell's writing and Russell's Doctor Who are on full display here, and it kicks it out of the park in doing that fun Saturday evening family adventure romp. It absolutely does the RTD, this is just fun for the boys and girls stuff perfectly. It also has some of the worst of RTD's Doctor Who, some of the really just like, why did you say that? Why did you do that? What the hell is with up with this wankery? It's got all of it. It is wonderful distilled Doctor Who, which means it's very fun, but when you come to do a bit of analysis, there's some stuff to kick as well.
For me, this isn't one where I can say, gosh, now that I've gone back, I was so surprised that I previously liked it and now it's rubbish or vice versa. Because, as I say, it's not that long since I last saw it and I knew how I felt about it even just recently. So my reaction as it played was, yeah, I know this one. I still like this one. There's the scene where X happens. There's the scene where Y happens. Yes, very comfortable with this. Wish it was Rings of Akatan, but happy to be watching a story I like at the very least. And maybe as we go into our sort of freestyle mode, Dave, I'll continue on and kick us off with the thought that the scenes set on Earth made me think of Children of Earth. Probably because we just watched Children of Earth recently. But you look at this and there's some budget on the screen, or at least what appears to be some budget. There's cars crashing into water, there's big semi-trailers, there's a huge factory, there's streets full of poison gas. It uses a lot of real-world stuff very cleverly. And I think this still looks great even in 2026. But then we go to the Sontaran ship And it's these really cheesy knobs and dials and glittery paint, the kind of stuff that looks like a 10-year-old got sent to Bunnings with $50 and was told, make the interior of a spaceship. Like, what happened? Is it meant to be a homage to Doctor Who looking a bit shit in the 70s when the Sontarans were getting around? Some might defend it that way, but I just think, no, if you're going to do this story that looks so good elsewhere, dropping the ball on the alien ship is just really disappointing. I think a casual watching this would be like, well, these scenes look great, but what the hell's going on there? That was one of my first reactions.
Yeah, I had some similar notes. Like you, I did acknowledge that they'd really pushed the boat out in some of the budget on this. The costumes, the location footage, the number of extras, the number of special effects. I thought, okay, this is the big one. And that certainly sits in with that RTD approach to showing a new season. You have those really soft, really, friendly, leading into the soapy opening episodes. You do a past episode, you do a future episode to remind new viewers that this is a timetable show. And then you do parts 4 or 5 are the big, exciting adventure. It's the 2-parter, and you really put the money on screen because by that stage you've gone, this is what we're doing, new viewers. This is the sort of show it is, and look what we can do. And this feels like a look what we can do sort of episode. It is very impressive. But you're right, it is looking very dated in parts. Some of those CGI effects I did wince. This is a bit like watching a 1970s effect in the 1990s. It actually does look a little bit ropey, and that's fine. We all sat there in the 90s and watched the Pertwee era and went, that CSO was cutting edge at the time, but whew, you can see it now.
Yeah.
And some of this CGI felt a bit like that, I've got to say.
Yeah, look, I think it just, even in the set design, I think they could have just been a bit cleverer. Like, if it's the future, just make a flat panel, just a black flat panel that, graphics can appear on, and maybe it's a touchscreen sort of thing. Don't make a sort of a box with purple sparkly knobs on it. Like, no, that just looks silly. It looks like a kid made it. Another Children of Earth, though, I'm going to hammer this a bit at the start, or just maybe a Torchwood feeling in general, Dave, is when the clone Martha, she's all naked and dripping goo. She comes out of this cloning vat, and it's done in quite a sexy way. And I was thinking, this feels a step beyond where Doctor Who should be landing in this era. This is more of a Torchwood visual to my eyes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I quite enjoyed watching it. I think a lot of chaps, maybe a few ladies out there would be thinking, I wouldn't mind dropping trow and jumping into the vat. But it's a bit of a blurring of the lines, between where the vibe of one show ends and the other begins. Were you getting any sort of Torchwood or Children of Earth vibe, taking into account Torchwood was a thing at this point?
I didn't use those words, but you're right. When I got to some of those scenes, it did feel a little bit like it was a bit of a tonal clash, because we have got this fun romp. We've got Donna's crazy family, and we've got the weird spoilt brat kid, and we've got the short, funny aliens. And now we've got some really dark sci-fi stuff happening, and naked ladies, and umbilical probe things coming out the back that she rips off. And I just thought, oh, that is a little bit. He's grown up, right? The word mature, dark. I don't know what
Torchwood.
word it is. Torchwood is as good a word as any. Yeah. Yes. No, I did have some moments of just like, this doesn't feel. One of these things is not like the others.
Yes, very much so. You mentioned tiny Sontarans there, Dave, so let me pull up this point. Tiny Sontarans shit me. They were never this small in the classic era, even at their most compact. And in some stories, they're actually pretty bloody massive. I don't know why the decision was made to do them in this comedy size. And it is a deliberate decision, because it's even in some of the dialogue. There are jokes in the dialogue about their size. One thing I do like about them, the flip side of the coin, is they aren't, total buffoons in this, like we get later with Strax. They love battle and all of this, but it never goes completely over the top. They're played just the right side of bonkers, I think. And who would have thought Mike, the cool person from the Young Ones, would make a good Sontaran?
Yeah, I actually think the Sontarans are a bit of a win. And I've often had them down as one of the examples of it when the new series had, where they did do a classic monster really, really well. I think they're up there with the Daleks as something that has really worked in the new series, particularly here. Like you, I sort of found the whole short thing a bit of a mystery. I mean, Kevin Lindsay wasn't tall, but he wasn't... I never saw Lynx or Steyr as being particularly short. They were, below average height, but they weren't particularly short. And you're right, the Sontarans and the two Doctors are bloody 7 foot tall or something. Mm-hmm. So that to me was a bit weird. I got over it fine. I actually think, yes, the Sontarans here are done very well. They are actually done seriously. They are actually lethal. They are actually dangerous. They are cunning. They are manipulative in a really nasty way. When the cool one from the young ones jokes about how, had you brought all your friends up, we would have just shot them. That was just a really nice sort of just offhand, like, look, you'd done what you needed and we're ready to wipe you out. Yeah, that's fine. I actually think they're really effective. The posh Sontaran was a little bit odd. I was sort of like, why is he the posh Sontaran? I guess there could be posh Sontarans. That's fine. I thought that was a little bit weaker than General Stahl, who was really cool. But yeah, I think the Sontarans are a big and successful part of this.
Yeah, well, they're interesting insofar as they're clones, but none of them look like one another, and they all have different personalities.
Yes, and different accents. So that was quite interesting, and it is something that you could have done differently now. It's sort of like when you watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from the 70s, and the Oompa Loompas are all obviously different actors, and they've hired sort of, every little person with an equity card to come and be an Oompa Loompa on that movie, and they all look different. By the time you get to the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton one, you have the technology where you just hire Deep Roy, and Deep Roy plays every Oompa Loompa, so they all look identical. We've had the same technology shift in Doctor Who in the meantime. So if they'd wanted, they could have had Christopher Ryan play every Sontaran, and that would have been a quite interesting choice. And perhaps we could have seen him with subtle variations or with different things. Like the Sontaran in the Sontaran Experiment, the Marshal has bumps. He has rank bumps. So that he's a different Sontaran. Maybe they could have had that. Another Sontaran point that I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if it was deliberate. I hope it was, Rob. The reveal of them where they take their... Stahl takes his helmet off for the first time was almost exactly 25 minutes in, and I thought, is that meant to be a homage to a Part 1 cliffhanger 25 minutes in? I hope it is.
Yeah, that's nice. That is very nice. Unit, Dave, aren't portrayed too badly, I think, versus where they go on to be in New Who. They come across as competent here. Colonel Mace, he does want to fight everything, and he does push his luck too far at one point, but when the Doctor screams at him to break contact, he actually does. He listens. You can imagine in another serial, the military just being written as never taking the Doctor's advice ever because they're just stupid military people. So he's not completely foolish. He just follows his training as far as he possibly can. And that also means he goes and sorts out the bullets that can take on the Sontarans, and the unit troops actually do quite well in their counterattack later in the story. There is a bit of a comedy moment towards the end where his subordinate plants a kiss on him after they win the day, but none of it reminds me of the modern, what I'm calling the modern, this used to be modern unit, but now there is a more modern unit, under Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, particularly in the Gatwa era where the personnel choices are just bizarre and it doesn't feel militaristic at all. It just feels quite stupid. Unit in this still feel okay to me. They're different to the old unit days in the 70s, but they feel okay here, I think.
I'm going to partially disagree with you.
Okay.
Now, when I was watching the Sontaran Stratagem particularly, I was making some very negative notes about Unit. And it's the scene at the start where we meet the Colonel and he's saluting the Doctor, and it's all about, who doesn't get a salute, and Donna wants a salute. And I'm just like, no, there are rules about when you salute. There are rules about who you salute. You don't just make it up. You don't just do it because this is the lead character in the story. And I was sitting there thinking, he is a bit of a buffoon. The soldiers are making dumb choices. They don't quite feel as disciplined as an elite military fighting unit should be. And I was writing lots of very negative notes. I then got to the Poison Sky, And it's almost like there's a personality shift because, as you say, suddenly he's doing what the doctor says. Suddenly he's making the harsh but necessary decisions. Suddenly he's like, hang on, the doctor's just told me how to beat these guys. I'm going to go and beat these guys now and be very efficient and just cold about doing it. And I thought, hey, why didn't we get this 45 minutes ago? Then we get the ending where it's all a bit silly and they kiss each other. And I'm like, I was ready to give you, benefit of the doubt. I was ready to give it a pass. But, I can't quite average it to a pass now, guys.
How about compared to modern Unit in Unit Tower, Dave?
Oh.
Surely you can see a difference.
Oh, can I?
I hope so.
I don't know. This feels very... I think they're all symptoms of the same problem, which is BBC... writers who've never had any experience of the military just don't know how to write the military. I kind of write it all off a little bit, but as I say, there was about 25 really good minutes in The Poison Sky that I thought was going to save Unit here, but not quite.
Okay, because I do see a difference when they're in the back of that semi-trailer. All those people sitting in front of screens are military professionals. They're not just like random ex-companions of the Doctor. Like, oh, let's just get Mel in. She'll do stuff, and let's just get all these randoms in. Let's get the kid on the Segway with the machine gun. I think it's chalk and cheese, the unit personnel in this versus the Gatway era.
Yeah, I think it's just different symptoms of the same problem.
Okay.
Rob, I said that there was a particular reaction I had, a particular initial reaction I had.
Yeah.
And that was watching the cold open where we cut to Martha. At first I've gone, that's right, Martha's in this. Awesome, I love Martha. She's great. And then she does the whole, and I'm bringing you back to Earth. And a little bit of vomit came up from my mouth. And I had to swallow it back down. Because Rob, I bloody hate that stuff. I hate all the Doctor worship. I hate all the Doctor wank. This whole like, oh, you're so good and I'm bringing you home. Oh my God, I threw up a little in my mouth.
I thought you were going to say you hate the way that's written to be a TikTok. I mean, TikTok wasn't a thing when this came out, but you know what I mean. A reel. It's just a line you put in the trailer.
Yeah, it is that as well. It is a line you put in the trailer, and I just thought, this is vomitous. This is terrible. And I was at that moment going, did I make a mistake? Fortunately, no. There was other stuff I liked, but that was just such a ghastly line. And look, Freema Agyeman is doing her best with it, but no one could say that. Laurence Olivier could not deliver that line. Maybe Kenneth Williams could get away with that line.
Well, look, I think it was great to see Martha again, and I know that's slightly different to what you're talking about, because the way old companions hardly ever came back in classic Who is something that New Who was happy to turn on its head and has been happy ever since to turn on its head. And I think more Martha isn't a bad thing. I take on board everything you've said, but I do remember watching this the first time and being like, what? Martha? You're kidding. Brilliant. I was so excited that we were getting an old companion back like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have Martha back. It feels like the start of that sort of big Doctor Who universe where these things can happen. And yes, we'd had Rose's family sort of float in and out. But you're right, they're not companions. They're not regulars. They're recurring characters. And so it was very cool. And I think that Martha does lift here. I like the portrayal. I like her involvement. I like seeing Martha grown up and past the Doctor, moved on from the Doctor, and there's even a conversation, because Rob, I did go ahead and watch the next episode, I must admit, and there's a conversation when they drop Martha off and she says to Donna, you will grow out of this, like you will decide you don't want to do this anymore. And Donna's like, no, never, I love doing this is awesome, I'm Donna, I'm just a temp from Chiswick, and this is the best life ever. And Martha's like, at some point you will grow out of this and you will want to move on. And never! And then there's he would have to forcibly remove my memories to get that. It sort of feels very foreshadowy now. So, yes, I did like Martha back.
It's almost like a very meta line to fans.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, look, if we're speaking about companions, Catherine Tate, I think she does reasonably well in this. She doesn't go completely over the top. Like, she has that bit where she comes back with the empty file and she's like, I'm super temp. I've just looked and there's no one's had a sick day and all of that. That's a bit, but she never goes like fully Donna in this, to my mind. And she's got her family tacked on, which I think works well. I mean, her mother me, but Bernard Cribbins is always just great to have around. So I liked that aspect of her character in this.
So we watched The Unicorn and the Wasp over Christmas.
Yes.
And I did comment in an episode about that I was quite surprised at how subdued Donna was, and maybe I've need to learn to love Donna, and she wasn't as bad as I remembered. This is not Donna at her worst, but there were a number of those moments when I was just like, sorry, could you just tone it down just a little bit? And in fact, I did have a note here about that exact moment when it could have been a very clever line about how I've just looked at the personnel files and look what I've got. It could be really dramatic. And instead I'm just going, okay, we get it. You think you're awesome. You love yourself. I get it. Would you just tone it down a little bit? Just get your hand off it. Just let's cut this poppy down a little bit, please. Mm-hmm. I do find that full-on stuff a little bit much. I do find the mother annoying like you. I kind of lurch a bit on Wilf. I think that when he's doing the very supportive stuff about Donna, I'm like, yeah, that's really lovely. When he's doing the doctor, he's the best thing ever. You've got to go with him. I go, oh my God. And when he's just sort of, being a dill, like, someone needs to go and do something really bloody stupid and dangerous because there's a cliffhanger coming around. I'll go do that. I'm like, no, sorry, that is just a little bit annoying.
Fair enough. Tennant, I think, is at peak Tennant. You've already used the word imperial phase a couple of times, Dave. I think he's at peak Tennant, especially his hair. Honestly, it's got a bit postcode of its own in this one. I watch him in this and I'm thinking, you're just the Doctor here, aren't you? Like, I've seen Tennant in 50 other things, but I watch this and I think, that's the 10th Doctor doing 10th Doctor things. It's not David Tennant being the 10th Doctor. This is the 10th Doctor. And that's how I watch his portrayal when I go back and watch episodes like this. It just shows us why he did just capture so many people's hearts, imagination, all of that stuff back in the day.
Yeah, I said that this was distilled RTD, and it is also, I think, distilled Tennant. I think that you get the peak of David Tennant. It is, as we said, him at the height of his powers, when he is lecturing people in that really cold, low, toned-down manner. It's really, really effective. When he's having fun, it's really effective. When he's the only one that takes a unit soldier seriously and actually bonds with this person as a person, it's really great. When he wants to give the monsters a choice, when he's working out what's going on, it's really effective. In between that, again, there are these over-the-top moments. I do think that it is a problem for me when Tennant is playing against Catherine Tate, and Catherine Tate's doing a really big performance, and so David Tennant feels he needs to do an equally big performance, and I'm like, no, that's not, no, one of you be a contrast to the other or something, and that was a problem. But overall, yes, look, very, very good. And again, I started by saying I can see why this was just a phenomenon around the UK.
Yeah.
This was absolute Saturday family viewing. It is so easy to watch. It is so fun. And Tennant is so in control and so natural and just the Doctor. And is it not quite as dry as I like my Doctor Who? I like my Doctor Who as a whiskey, straight. And this is a bit more of, I don't know, a champagne or something, prosecco. But I get that that's popular and it works here really, really well. So I don't judge it for that. I did struggle though, and it's not just Tennant here. I want to sort of branch on to another topic here with the use of the word clever, which is very RTD. And there's lots of this, I'm clever, no, I'm clever, no, I'm clever. No one talks like that. No, nobody does that. Look, I'm often in rooms with a bunch of people who all think they're the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. And there are ways that people portray that in the way they act and the way they talk. And they are doing a little bit of pecking order stuff and trying to work out, well, who is the smartest and most control in this room? Nobody does it by going, I'm clever. No, I'm clever. Oh, no, but I'm clever. You're not that clever. Now I'm doing something clever. And I don't know what it is about it that just kind of irritates me, but it feels a little bit like it's writing down.
Yeah, well, maybe it sort of is trying to talk to the kids in the audience. Like, I'm thinking of when the Doctor says to Luke, like, oh, it's hard being really clever, isn't it? There's the use of the word clever. And I think that's trying to, like, reach out to maybe the archetypal lonely kid at home who does feel they're too clever and doesn't want to show it at school because the kids will kick their head in at recess or whatever.
Let me just say, I think that's a really good point you make there, Rob, and I do accept that. And like every negative point that I'm making here, or not even negative, just thing that didn't work for me, I repeat over all of it, I'm going, I get this probably worked for the target audience, which is a 12-year-old, boy or girl watching, not whatever I was, 30-something at the time. I get that.
Yeah.
No, 20-something at the time. I'm not going to hate myself.
Very good.
27 or 28, yes.
Well, look, speaking of Luke, I think he's a decent character, but I'm not sure the actor, Ryan Sampson, has quite the presence to really nail it. And I don't think it's an accent thing. I think he does that well because he's British doing an American accent. It's his presence. He's a small guy. And that works well at the end because he looks even smaller having his tantrum when all the other kids just walk out on him and he's impotently waving this gun around. I think that's really good. But for a genius running his own academy, he doesn't quite strike me as really fitting that for a lot of the story. I don't see him as being inspiring or motivational. I don't know why anyone would want to go to his academy. He's just a nerdy little shit. He needs something more. And if it's not going to be in stature, I think it needs to be in personality. He needs to be charismatic. I think we need to almost like him so that his betrayal, when it happens, hits harder. Instead, it's almost like, oh, look at this nerdy little shit. And yeah, he's being a traitor and being a nerdy little shit, cuddling up with the Sontarans. Well, that's a surprise from a nerdy little shit. There's not a lot there.
Again, I see the best and worst of RTD's writing in the character of Luke Radigan. I definitely like the arc that he goes on from I think I'm clever, therefore I think I'm entitled, through to I've made a mistake and I'm going to pay the ultimate price to redeem myself. I think that does work well, and that is a good archetypal character, but one that is working, and I appreciate it. I think that when he gets those moments, he is very, very good. I was interested to go and look at Ryan Sampson's career, and not only has he had a very solid career in television, but unusually for an actor of his generation these days, he has got a lot of very serious theatre work in there. Mm-hmm. He's obviously a very accomplished stage actor, and in a way that a lot of actors I don't think are these days. They are purely on TV and film. So I think that does come across, and that does lead me to wonder what directions he was given, because those tantrum scenes he gets, some of them work, but some of them, or the ones where he's getting overexcited and he's sort of throwing his arms about and exclaiming in a fake American accent, I just sort of thought, is that what the director told him to do? Mm-hmm. Because I can't imagine he, as a classically trained stage actor, would have made that choice. So have they gone, Ryan, you're there for the kids. You've got to make it big. You've got to make it teabag television type stuff. And so I'm a little bit surprised about that. But overall, I thought he worked. I think he works well off David Tennant. He plays well against David Tennant. I like the way that he's duped by the Sontarans, and the fact that he's clever and duped works. But one of the plot lines that I'd completely forgotten was the whole Ratigan's World thing, where basically he wants to take a whole bunch of smart people and go and make them hang out with them and play with them and, let's be honest, have sex with him.
Yeah.
And I was watching that going, A, this is a bit grotesque. B, he's not that dumb. This whole idea that he can just say to them, I'm going to wipe out humanity, but now you're going to come and be my besties and we're going to have a sex roster. I mean,
yeah,
it is beyond credibility that he sat there and thought that's going to work out.
Yeah. He does get a very credible response, though, from the 3 or 4 girls who are actually there.
Totally.
They're like, oh, yeah,
totally.
Right. Even though he's waving a gun, they're just not having it. They're out of there.
No, and that's good. And the fact that the character is so sort of weedy and awful that even when he's carrying a gun, it was like, yeah, come on, dude, no. Yeah, that does work well. Again, there's great RTD writing in the character. There's embarrassingly bad RTD writing in the same character. It's fascinating to watch. It works overall. It really does. And I think Ryan Sampson does give him enough humanity to make it work. But some of that script, I'm just going, the poor dude.
Yeah.
He was given those lines and those directions.
Yeah. Does the pacing seem off to you when Tennant starts saying goodbye to everybody because he's off to suicide bomb the Sontarans? I understand what they want to do, but there's all this racing about and tension, and then it just slows right down, and he starts making these farewells to everyone individually. Like, hang on, isn't there a crisis we're meant to be addressing here? Oh, we have to say goodbye. And then have the companions be all like, he's off to sacrifice himself. And do we even think that will happen? Without even taking into account that we're going to see him the following week on TV. It just doesn't fit the storyline. I think I would have had him making more of a rushed goodbye. Like, oh, guys, you've been great, mustache. And during that, maybe Luke pushes him out of the way and teleports off to blow them up. And it's done that way. And you can still have something about the Doctor's sacrifice after the fact. Like Martha or Donna saying, were you really going to do that? And like punching him or something. I just found it weird that he just suddenly stopped and just started doing mini speeches to everybody.
I didn't have a problem with that. What I did notice about that ending was that it has two climaxes. Mm-hmm. There is the moment when he fixes the ATMOS problem. And then it's almost like, and now I've done that, I've got to go and fix the Sontaran problem. And that, I suspect, is a pacing thing and a getting it out to a double episode length type of thing, because usually you would have the one solution that solves the problem. You know, it would be the destruction of the Sontaran ship in the atmosphere is what ignites the ATMOS that does the thing that saves the planet or something. Whereas this is very much like, I'm going to go and solve this problem. Yep. Climax.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm going to go and solve this problem. And I think they just were trying to get the story out to 90 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah, agreed.
Rob, it's been nearly 2 decades. How do you feel about the Sontaran dance?
I recall when I saw this back in the day, I was very embarrassed by it. I thought it was very stupid and weird. Now I watch it and I'm a lot more relaxed about it. I don't know whether I've just mellowed or whether I'm just used to it or what. But I remember initially when I saw it, I thought, oh, God, no. Why are we doing this? No, yuck.
I had exactly the same note. When I was 20-something and watching this, I was like, that is embarrassing. That is a kid show stuff. This time I've gone, okay, it's a bit naff, but it's kind of fun naff, okay.
Yeah. Let's move into our final thoughts. Wrap us up, Dave.
I am glad I rewatched this. I had a lot of fun. Were there things that stuck out? And particularly with the foreknowledge of where RTD2 went, were there moments that stuck out and I've gone, I can see the worst of him starting here. I really can. Absolutely, there were those moments. But it's a fun romp. The Sontarans are cool. Christopher Ryan's great. Ryan Sampson does a good job with what he's given and has a good arc. It looks spectacular. Tennant's at the height of his powers. Are there some moments I thought were a bit OTT or weren't quite for me? Sure, but do I accept that they were all perfect for a 12-year-old and his mum and dad watching on the BBC on a Saturday evening? Yep, and I get that. This, again, to me, the best and worst of RTD, the best and worst of Tennant. It is distilled RTD, but I had fun.
Very good. I think this is really good too. Really decent. The story has enough to stretch across 2 episodes and not feel padded. Luke is a shit, but he does the noble thing in the end, which is kind of cliche, but it's appreciated. And it was the only really right thing for him to do. Bernard Cribbins is always a good time. It juggles 2 companions with ease. Sometimes stories struggle with 1 companion. This does 2 companions with ease. The Doctor has plenty to do. The Sontarans are back. Unit, I think, does good work. I could go on with the number of boxes it ticks for me, but you get the idea. This doesn't shit the bed like so much more recent Doctor Who has done. This is Doctor Who circa 2008, absolutely in its imperial phase. I completely agree. Being Doctor Who circa 2008, it's good stuff.
I was energised enough by this to go and watch The Next Doctor and The Doctor's Daughter, both of them for the first time since broadcast.
Wow. Very cool. And so, Dave, that was our topic for the month. Let's move into our listener feedback, and we'll begin on the passing of James Valentine and our Don't Read the Comments episode that went out. These are just a very, very small selection of the comments we received. I'll kick us off with Jonathan Jeffrey. He says, certainly the end of an era for me. I remember in particular his intros to Remembrance and Silver Nemesis. He really was the bridge between school and dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. From Kendrick Lieber, I don't think I've ever seen such universal love for a celebrity, and it is very justified. He is associated with my earliest happy childhood memories. The afternoon show was the highlight of my day because it meant I was home from school. Monkey, Doctor Who, Degrassi Junior High, The Mysterious Cities of Gold, so many awesome shows from my childhood. And there he was with his wry sense of humour. Kendrick, we had the same childhood.
Yeah. Shane Gordon says, I always had a soft spot for him because of those Doctor Who episodes. I remember tuning in for Time and the Rani and suddenly saw this badly dubbed old movie set in ye olden days with the Spanish pirates. And, well, I hate to admit it, but I thought, this can't be the new Doctor Who, can it? I felt like a fool when the proper titles and episode kicked in moments later. James presenting back then, it was fun. I would have seen Rob too, because I remember watching that quiz. But anyway, rest in peace, James.
And from Kate Morgan, saw him a few years ago at the Katoomba Cultural Centre, and I chatted with him and said I loved the afternoon show and that I knew most of the Doctor Who people on the show, and he laughed, saying they probably aren't teens anymore.
Nice. Moving on to comments on our Children of Earth episode, we have Ian Sykes. He says, Hi, Rob and Dave. It took me a little while to rewatch Children of Earth, but I finished it this week and promptly listened to your show. I thought your commentary was spot on. I agree that this is peak Torchwood, dates well, whilst also being very of its time. As a gay man, I remember feeling so happy to see the queer representation on screen and sad when Yanto died. It hadn't occurred to me until hearing your thoughts just how timid it really was, how far we've come. One thing I wanted to share ties in with what you were saying about how watchable this show is, even now and for non-Who fans. I put on the final episode to watch, and my husband sat down to see what was going on. Normally, he'll watch a few minutes of Doctor Who then disappear quickly, but he was hooked with this and asking questions about the premise and stayed right until the end. For someone who says he doesn't enjoy sci-fi, I thought this was pretty telling of how compelling the series is, especially as it comes to its conclusion. Thanks for prompting me to re-watch this series. I really enjoyed it, and like Rob, I dug out my old DVDs, which I bought 20 years ago, to see it the first time.
Nice. Thanks for those thoughts, Ian. I'm glad you enjoyed our commentary. On the Circuit Breaker multi-platform story that we discussed in our news segment, there's already been some reaction, Rob.
Yes, well, yes, there has.
From Steve Panozzo. It's a pretty cloth-eared marketing strategy, to be honest, and certainly a strategy that isn't informed by previous failures in doing the exact same thing. I suspect the power that be continue to work in some sort of weird echo chamber.
Me too. Bradley Willard says, I don't know who's buying into all this multimedia stuff. If they want to engage the fandom and do a wilderness-style continuation with The Fugitive Doctor, produce a radio series in-house and release it on BBC Sounds. That will get people talking because it will be available for free and everyone can interact with it. Alas, if they can make money out of something, the BBC will pounce on it.
Troy Aloysius Amos says, for me, just develop interesting novels, interesting audios, and interesting comics. They don't have to be connected.
Hear, hear. And Stephen Dutch says, first, David Tennant crossover stuff with Time Lord Victorious, then Doomsday with, and he's just put some question marks, and now Circuit Breaker with The Fugitive Doctor. See the effort they go to avoid Ncuti Gatwa and Jodie Whittaker? A reboot from Capaldi would still work, or it seems a total reboot. Or how about a non-woke series with Paul McGann?
Look, I appreciate the thought, Stephen. I suspect that somewhere they think they're making a bit of money out of this prospect. If they had to pay Ncuti or Jodie or Capaldi or McGann, I think that would write it all off. So I would love to see something with them as well, but I think the budget would not stretch to it, sadly.
Yeah, me too. I do like that comment of Bradley's, though, that if they produced a radio show, it could go out on BBC Sounds as a podcast and everyone does get it for free. I think that'd be just marvellous. But anyway.
Yeah.
Let's move on to what have we been watching. I finally finished One Piece Season 2, which I mentioned on last month's podcast about how disappointed I'd been with it so far, but hold the front page. The final 3 episodes redeemed it. It was one long 3-part story, and it was actually really good. I'm still a bit dirty that we had to get through 5 so-so episodes to get the 3 good ones, but it did balance the season for me, and when we go into another season in another year or two's time, I'll be, going in with an open mind rather than thinking the previous season was terrible, so that's something. The Boys Season 5, I knocked through each episode of this as it came out, as I know you did, Dave, and we're actually going to talk about the finale of the show after this episode is over, so stay tuned for more thoughts on that.
Spoiler-heavy thoughts, that's why we're doing it afterwards.
Yes, indeed. Stay tuned. Good Omens 3 was really, really bad. I didn't like the second season much either, so I wasn't expecting the world, but with all the Neil Gaiman issues that happened just as they were filming this, and this was supposed to be like a 6-part series, it got squished into a 90-minute film. It's just this bizarre rushed thing that's near incomprehensible in places. There are plot threads that go nowhere. Maybe there's a good scene or two here and there, a couple of genuine chuckles across the 90 minutes. Had it been 6 episodes long, I think it would have been a lot better. Gosh, I don't have much good things to say about that. Homicide New York came back recently for a second season on Netflix. I quite enjoy these. There's a Los Angeles version of it too. I just love breezing through these really strange cases and how detectives solve things. And finally, The Crash. That's a documentary that recently dropped on Netflix. It's about this young woman. She's a wannabe influencer who drives her car into a wall at high speed. She kills the 2 guys who are in the car with her, but she doesn't die, and there's an investigation into that. It's nothing profound, but like Homicide New York, I really enjoy the forensic side of investigations and how detectives work. And of course, these docos add a bit of showbiz sparkle and present the information in an order that keeps you guessing until the end. I just find them very watchable, so I quite enjoyed that documentary too. That's been my month.
Nice. Well, I obviously watched quite a bit of Doctor Who, but in between that, I watched a bit more All Creatures Great and Small, Rob.
Nice.
I have now finished season 5, so I've only got one to go. Again, having a bit of a break because I think that just breaking up those seasons is helpful in the enjoyment. But I did really enjoy season 5. I've really enjoyed the Carmody character. I think he's been my favourite thing about the show for the last 2 seasons. So that was fun. Like you, I finished The Boys. We'll chat about that with spoilers after our credits. And I did just want to mention, because I enjoyed the Turing test so much, I did go back and watch The Imitation Game, which I saw in cinemas and wasn't all that enamored with at the time, but I enjoyed it a lot more again. And having read Endgame, I'm now rewatching the miniseries Cambridge Spies, which was good. And I just want to mention, Rob, I have been to see The Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm not going to say anything spoilery, but I'm just going to say, look, was it the deepest and most powerful? Was it Andor-like? No, of course it wasn't. Did I just have fun watching Mando taking care of business for 2 hours? Yes, I did. All my friends who've seen it, be they Star Wars fans, Doctor Who fans, or just work friends who've seen it, have said the same thing. They just thought it was fun. It got a cinema score of A-. It's got like 90% audience ranking on Rotten Tomatoes. My prediction is that it will get a lot of news stories in the time between us recording this episode and putting out this episode that, it had a terrible box office in week 1, but I think it will actually hold quite well because of word of mouth, and it will do quite respectively over 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. I've watched a lot of reviews of it. That's been the general consensus. Even people, I think, who wanted to hate on it still said reasonably nice things about it. Like, yeah, it's kind of nice, but it isn't deep and it's not a big space opera. It's like 3 episodes of The Mandalorian stuck together, perhaps.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which brings us to next time, Rob.
Yes, it's been a year since Ncuti Gatwa regenerated. So in the spirit of our ultimate Jodie Whittaker cold take a few years back, where we took some episodes each to revisit for the first time since broadcast, we're going to do the same and present the ultimate Ncuti Gatwa cold take, Dave. And this is something you've been quite keen to do.
Well, it's because I enjoyed our Jodie Whittaker cold take so much, because I did find going back to 3 or 4 of her episodes a year after her era finished, I did appreciate them more. And a lot of audience also said the same thing. And I don't think I'm saying anything too behind the scenes, Rob, to say it's one of our most downloaded episodes.
Yeah, it actually is.
So I'm very curious to go back. We will each pick 3 or 4 shooty episodes. We won't tell each other what they were, so we could end up only talking about 4 episodes. We might talk about 8 episodes. We don't know, or 6 or 7. And we're going to watch them, and we're going to just say, a year on, 2 years on from this era, how does it all stand up as just another old series of Doctor Who?
Mm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm warming to the idea.
You're a bit apprehensive when I first raised it, Rob, but I'm glad to hear you're warming to it. I think it will be interesting to look back.
Yeah, in my mind, we did the Jodie one like 2 or 3 years after she left, but it was only 12 months.
It was only 12 months. I think it's a good amount of time, and look, we'll see how it goes, and then I think maybe in July we'll do something really classic-y to have a bit of a contrast.
Yeah, we'll bring balance back to the Force.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right. That's the end of the episode. Stay listening if you want to hear us talk about the boys. If not, you can switch off now. You won't miss any Doctor Who chat. And until next time, I've been Rob.
And I've been Dave.
And we'll talk again soon.
So, Rob, as we mentioned in our What Have We Been Watching, we have both watched, with a certain amount of anticipation, qualified perhaps, the series finale of The Boys. So we wanted to have a bit of a chat about that. But very, very clear, guys, the spoiler curtain is down. We are going to be talking about who dies, how they die, what we thought of the deaths. If you don't want to be spoiled, come back later.
Yeah.
I'm going to start, Rob, by saying I was unusually in agreement with a lot of the internet commentary about Series 5 of The Boys, which was, look, is it still better than a lot of television out there? Yes, it is. But did it feel a lot weaker than particularly those early seasons of The Boys? Yes. And I did find by the middle of Series 5, I was watching almost out of habit and just because I wanted to know how it ended, not because I needed to know how it ended. But as we got into those last 2 episodes and I was getting to the moment, I did feel a very real sense of anticipation.
Yeah, look, that's fair. My interest in The Boys as a TV series, because I never read the comics. I mean, I've got some sense of what happened in them, but I've never read them. Was that initial concept where it was like, what if the Justice League was real and put on this happy face for the public, but it was full of total pricks who hated each other behind the scenes? And what if these people actually made the superhero movies that everyone goes to see? So it was actually real superheroes in their own movies. They sort of come across like pro wrestlers, like they can actually do the do. They're real people, but they're also entertainers and actors, and behind the scenes it's dysfunctional. That's the storyline in The Boys that I really enjoyed. I found that a really fun premise. And then they'd layer on some laughs and some black humour, some really gross out stuff, that made you question, are they allowed to show that on television? Which I used to ask myself quite a lot in the early seasons. Just great. Even when they started to colour in the background, like how did these superpowers manifest in humanity? I enjoyed all of that backstory. I enjoyed the Gen V spin-off. But as time went on, it did start to change. And the whole, here are some real-life superheroes making movies, making money for this corrupt company, just became, the good guys are on the run and they want to kill Homelander. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And that's, I feel like we've been marking time for a couple of seasons. So yes, I was very happy to get to this season myself because I knew it would be the end. I thought it has to end.
Yeah, I felt the same. I discovered The Boys when season 2 came out, so I did watch 1 and 2 back to back. And it was one of those things where you watch it and go, this is like nothing else I have seen on television. Yep. This is new and it is innovative. And at some point that does wear off, right? Like at some point you can't sustain that for all that long. And look, Homelander, as played by Anthony Starr, is a fantastic character, brilliantly portrayed. And I think some of the most memorable parts of the series, other than the particularly grotesque ones, which are very memorable for other reasons, are those moments where Homelander will arrive on a location or a scene and you just go, well, they're dead. All these characters are dead. And I don't know how it'll happen. I don't know whether they have seconds or minutes or hours, but there is nothing they can do to stop Homelander. They are dead. And, they're really powerful moments. And so how they defeat him was a very interesting and open question that I was looking forward to seeing the resolution of. And also just seeing, given their willingness to really take things to the edge, how far they took it and who did make it to the final scene.
Yeah. And look, leading up to this, I could see a lot of internet commentary quite upset with where the boys had gone. Not because of the stuff I've been talking about, where I just preferred, I've explained what I enjoyed about the boys in the early episodes, but people really bought into Homelander, and there was that episode where he lands and some guy in a crowd said something to him and he just lasered him and zapped him. And then the crowd went nuts and was just so excited and were cheering for Homelander. And I think that's what some of these internet commentators were like. They really loved the character. So seeing this final episode and him being taken down by Butcher, they just don't accept it. And I think, well, guys, this is precisely how someone would act when their superpowers get taken away. He's on his knees begging, I'll eat shit, I'll fillet you, whatever you like. And then he has his skull sort of broken in half. I thought that was a fantastic ending. It's not landed well, though, with these internet folks who really love the character. And I think wanted to see him, I don't know, laser everyone in the world and kill everybody. I don't know what they wanted.
Yeah, I think that there were 3 great things about the finale and 1 weak thing. And one of the great things was the end of Homelander. I agree that moment when he lasers someone in the crowd a couple of seasons ago and just realises, I can get away with this, is a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
But I've seen a number of memes, you're right, from people who they have Homelander just wiping people out on one panel and then, a quote of Homelander begging for his life in the other and go, how did we go from this to this? It's like, guys, did you miss the point? The whole point is this is a flat track bully. This is a guy who, because of his powers, thinks he can do anything. But deep down, he's a coward, he's a fool, he's immoral, he's a weed. And the finale is all about seeing the real Homelander without his powers and seeing what a weedy, cowardy, horrible little person he is, and then get his comeuppance. I thought that was really, really effective. And I also like, now, Rob, I said this to you a while ago, so it's true. I said that my prediction was that Ryan would take him out. Now, that wasn't quite correct, but I did like that the final thing that has to fall into place to defeat Homelander is when his son comes in and says, right, for the good of humanity, I need to help to take down my father. And it's Ryan who is actually holding him there for Tamika to zap him with the radiation to remove him of his powers. I think that was a really nice pivotal moment.
Yeah, and I think Ryan might have enjoyed having powers, so that was a self-sacrifice for Ryan as well. Not just killing his father, but also losing his powers.
Yes, yeah, that was really, really effective. I thought the death of Butcher was perfectly done.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the very final stuff at the end was really well done, and when Huey said that the name of the baby that he was having with Starlight was Robin, I've just gone, that is perfect. That is a wonderful, lovely callback to the girlfriend that he had in episode 1 that was killed by A-Train. I just thought that is a lovely little thematic tie back to the very first episode.
Did you think Butcher was going to release the virus?
Because it's the boys, yes, I thought it was possible.
Yeah, so did I. I thought we were going to get Butcher being a hero by taking down Homelander, but then Butcher being a villain by releasing the virus and killing all the superheroes, which ironically wouldn't be him because he got zapped with the beam, so he's no longer a superhero, so he would have lived.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really well done. The one negative for me was the end of the Deep. I just thought that was a little bit perfunctory, as much as I enjoyed the stuff leading up to it. And again, the Deep's kind of one of those characters where the arc of him going from a member of the Seven to just pathetic is good, but he kind of had to just sit at pathetic for about 3 years, and that was a bit of a problem. I enjoyed the Samuel L. Jackson shark, though. That was a great scene. But I just thought that once he went in the water, it was all a little bit quick, a little bit perfunctory. I kind of wanted to see him get torn limb from limb by the fish. Now, somebody at work did tell me that they'd read that the squid that kills the Deep is meant to be the cousin of the octopus he eats in series 3, I think it is.
Ah, okay. That's a nice tie-in.
I don't know if that's true or that's a fan thing, but that's cool. But that was the one moment where I was like, yeah, I think they could have done a little bit more with the Deep.
Yeah, I think they're just kind of trying to rush through all that stuff and get Starlight maybe back to the White House. So she had to wrap up that fight out on the coast. But it was appropriate that she was the one, I think, who ended him, because to go back to the first episode, he forces himself on her in the boardroom. Yeah. Yeah,
no, look, I thought it all worked thematically. I was satisfied. It had some good wow moments. It had good character moments. And at the very last moment with the baby called Robin hit the heartstrings nicely. And I thought, yep, job done.
Yeah, as I said to you the night it went out, like we had a quick sort of message and we decided not to go too in-depth on Messenger just so we could have this conversation live, as it were. But I did say to you that night, it was the best episode of the season for me. Not that it was a huge bar to get over. And I think they stuck the landing, which in this modern age, in quotation marks, seems very, very rare. So many shows don't do that. I think it did.
Yeah, no, I think it did too. I don't think the season was particularly great, but the landing was very cool.
Yeah. And I'm glad it's over now. I think it had run out of steam.
I think it ran out of steam probably a season ago. If this episode had happened at the end of season 4, that probably would have been a better outcome. But yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, all good. Well, that was our discussion on The Boys, for those of you who hung around. Until next time, I've been Rob.
I've been Dave again. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to
The Doctor Who Show with Rob and Dave.
Find us online by searching for
The Doctor Who Show.
We also love it when you write in. Drop us a line anytime at hello@thedwshow.net.